I'm here with my very good friend, an A-list Hollywood film writer, someone extremely talented. I've known David for quite a while. David Marconi is his name. He has written the script of The Enemy of the State with Will Smith and Gene Hackman. Recently, The Foreigner. He's working on other projects. He's one of the most talented people I know in Hollywood. But more important than that even is the fact that David understands that the truth is important, that the American people need to know the truth, and the government does not tell us the truth. And I brought him here today, and he would kindly agreed to appear to discuss his experience with unidentified flying objects, what he knows about them, and what the American people need to know about the individuals and aliens that are here in the world that are not harmful to us, but in fact have been surveilling us for many, many years. Dave, welcome to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. The American people need to understand the truth of what's out there. They don't need to be afraid, but they need to really get all the truth. The government's been holding it back from us. And then recently, of course, the military has said that pilots are able now to file reports of what they see without retribution, these Air Force pilots and Navy pilots. But still, the government's going to hold back on that information. So I thought it'd be really good for you to disclose to the American people your experience with unidentified flying objects and people like Stephen Greer who have followed this issue and have investigated it for many years.
I mean, what is the truth? I mean, that's like peeling away the onion skin. I can talk about my personal experiences, which is the truth for me, but I don't really know exactly what the truth is, and I don't know if we ever will, at least, in my lifetime. But I saw my first craft probably when I was 12 years old, and I've been seeing them repeatedly since then. I believe that there's actually two space programs that are afoot here. There's like NASA, which many people say stands for Never a Straight Answer. And then there's the actual military program that's run, what I believe is by the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address to the nation. I think that a lot of these technologies, a lot of the craft that we see flying, in the sky right now, I mean, they're appearing much more, because everyone has, high-res cell phones. So we're seeing a lot more of these things, and people are also now starting to go into space. And I believe that some of these are ours. I mean, you have the F-117 that's suddenly been retired because the technology is no longer appropriate. We have secret programs where I believe we're developing a lot of these craft. Ben Rich, who ran Skunk Works, he has a very famous quote, said that we now have the ability to take ET home. We have technologies that are beyond anything that the American public is aware of, but they're not being told about these technologies. We have anti-gravity, we have free energy. Private scientists have also been able to master some of this stuff, but we're not being told about this stuff, because to be told about this stuff, we would displace a multi-trillion-dollar industry, basically the petroleum business. So these technologies could change life on this planet, within a matter of 20 years. It would revolutionize transportation, revolutionize our entire lives, but to come out with this information would destroy the power base and the powers that be. And, who knows what it would do to religion and everybody else. But the petroleum industries and the military-industrial complex would take a severe hit if this technology, free energy and anti-gravity, were to be released. So we're being kept from these technologies. I believe they've had these technologies since the 50s, and they're being withheld from the American public because of a cabal of greed and power.
What about the possibility of people from other solar systems or creatures or whatever you want to call them, aliens here on Earth? There have been sightings recently by the Air Force pilots themselves and others. What's the possibility of that?
Well, I believe this planet's been visited before mankind was even here. I mean, if you can imagine what a technological society would be like that's even 100 years more advanced than us, let alone a technological society that's 1,000 years more advanced than us, or one that's 1,000,000 years more advanced than us. I mean, and they view us, this is my thoughts, is that they view us, they have no ill intention. If they did, we would have been gone long ago. Nor do they want to interfere with what we're doing. But they are, however, very concerned about, weapons being put into space and, nuclear bombs and all those things that can do damage not only to, our home planet, but, you start putting nuclear weapons and space weapons into space, we become a threat not only to ourselves, but to, the universe. We are kind of like the apes of the universe in the way that we go about and settle our conflicts with guns and knives and everything else. I believe advanced, civilizations have moved beyond the realm of conflict and have universal good intentions. Stephen Greer has developed ways to tap into this through meditation and telepathy. A lot of other people in the past have done this. You can look at Ingo Swann, who also came out of a program, SRI, that was run by the CIA, and through remote viewing and a lot of these other techniques, you're able to reach out and have experiences. So it's been very interesting. I've attended several of Dr. Greer's expeditions where craft appear. And they're basically, they have peaceful intentions, and through meditation and other techniques, we've captured them on film, on video. It's been an amazing experience, and it really kind of opens up your eyes. I tend to keep it on a personal level. It's not really something I, talk to outside of, the realm of my friends. But it's been a very kind of amazing experience for me.
What did you observe at some of these events? Tell us a little bit more about Stephen Greer, too. I've met him. You and I went to the premiere of one of his films, Unacknowledged, a few years ago. Very impressive guy, someone who's very sincere. He's not a grandstander. But tell us, what you know about Stephen Greer, how you got to know him, and what you observed at these events, specifically.
Well, I got to know him because, when you see something as a young child and it goes against, the realm of, what you're being told officially, you start to look for answers. And again, I'm referring to the first, ET craft I saw when I was like 12. And, it wasn't swamp gas. It wasn't, a weather balloon or any of those other ridiculous things they try to convince you of. It was a craft, and I saw it with 5 other people, and it was, moving across the sky in broad daylight. So I started from an age of 12. I was always starting to research, this kind of stuff, and I realized, this was like the first great conspiracy that I myself, I felt I uncovered, and then that led me to, other conspiracies. I mean, they're like dogs. Suddenly you notice them, and they're everywhere. So it was an interesting experience for me, and I found Stephen Greer, and I started watching his stuff. He had originally done something called Project Disclosure, where he got a lot of these former military people. I think there's about 300 or 400 interviews on the internet, and he got a lot of these former military people to come forward and start talking about the unacknowledged projects that they were working at. They're called USAPs, which stands for Unacknowledged Special Access Programs, where a lot of the alien tech that had been captured was reverse engineered, and then the stuff dribbled out to the American public through the various technological companies. But the companies that have been heavily involved in this are like Raytheon, Bobby Inman, Lockheed. These are the people that are reverse engineering this stuff and controlling the technologies. And it was a very eye-opening experience to watch all these interviews with these former military people who had impeccable credentials come forward and start talking about reverse engineering of craft. I mean, there's a book called The Day After Roswell by Major General Corso, I believe, where he comes out and says, these are the programs we were doing, and these were the craft we recovered, and this was the reverse engineering we did on these stuff. And it was very kind of eye-opening in that sense. And so I watched this, and Greer was able to get a lot of these people to step forward, because even though they signed these heavy-duty non-disclosure agreements with the government, they couldn't, if they started talking about it, they really couldn't be prosecuted, because to prosecute them, there would have to be a court of law, and the government would have to come out and acknowledge the types of projects they were working on that they were somehow compromising. So all the government could do once these people again, I'm not saying the government, but all that could happen to these people is they could be discredited and they could be ridiculed and they could be, made fun of, which is a very effective type of, weapon. I mean, that's in Will Smith and, Enemy of the State, they steal away his credibility. So that's in turn what happens to a lot of these people that come out and start talking about what they've seen or some of the secret government programs that are being run. They get ridiculed and destroyed that way. There's also a lot of false narratives in the UFO community that are putting forward false information. So pretty soon it's just you're walking through a field of chaff trying to figure out what's real, what's really happening, and what isn't real. But one of the messages that Stephen Greer pushes a lot is that there is no hostility with these beings or their civilizations, and if anything, they're here to help us. And I truly believe that, and I know that doesn't really fit the military narrative that they want to push. I remember there was a famous quote that Wernher von Braun, a former, Nazi paperclip scientist who had worked for Peenemünde on the V2 projects, and he then later got into the Saturn programs for the U.S. And he said something very prophetic. He said, the U.S. military will push. First, it's going to be the Russians. Then it's going to be the terrorists. Then it's going to be the rogue third world nations. Then it's going to be the asteroid threat. And finally, they're going to drum up the ET threat. And these are going to be the threats that they're going to use to basically push forward their increasing military budget year after year after year, with the ultimate threat being, the ET threat, which is just an absolute bunch of garbage. Again, if they wanted to destroy us with their ray guns, they could have done it, a long time ago.
Well, it's interesting in the context, David. You know what I do. I mean, you followed it for a while. I follow what you do. You wrote Enemy of the State, I reiterate. So you understood that when you created that script and the way they tried to discredit Will Smith and others. But the government rarely tells you the truth. If it's moving its mouth, this is what they say about lawyers, it must be lying. But the American people need to understand that something's out there, something is happening, and you identified two sources of it, our own military programs and technology, but also the technology of people from other systems, or at least entities from other systems. And who's to say, even if they're not manned, that they're not sending unmanned vehicles here like we do to other planets? So to be beaten back and not being able to talk about this for so long, and Air Force pilots, now they can at least have reports without being retaliated against by the military, but they still can't disclose to the American people in full detail what they see.
No, and a lot of, and these reports have, been going on for, history. As long as history's been recorded, there's been reports of star people and star things and, and miracles in the sky. And now as technology is able to record this stuff much more instantly, there's going to be a plethora of a tidal wave of information that pretty soon they won't be able to hold back. And once this stuff, comes forward, and and people realize that, the government, the emperor will lose his clothes, and the government won't have their power, and that's what they're frightened of.
Here you've heard it. UFOs do exist, and Freedom Watch is on it. We're following this, and we're looking into it in greater detail. Dave, we're going to have you back at a later time. I want to talk about some of your films, too, because you're really a great writer and a great talent. Thank you for coming on, and God bless you.
Thank you.